You know that moment? You open Spotify, and right there on your home screen is a playlist that just feels, well, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's got those old favorites you forgot about, songs you've had on repeat, and then, boom, a new track that just instantly clicks. It feels less like software and more like Spotify kind of gets you.
It absolutely feels personal, yeah. And you're right, that connection isn't, it's not accidental. It's the product of incredibly complex algorithms and,
Oh,
sophisticated AI constantly working behind the scenes,
right.
trying to understand your unique musical tastes.
And that's really the heart of our deep dive today. We've pulled together a stack of sources, research papers, technical blogs, articles, notes, to really sort of peel back the layers and see how Spotify actually does this personalization magic.
Yeah, our goal looking at this material is really to unpack the fundamental ways they learn what you like, maybe explore some of the specific technologies they use,
Uh-huh.
and even touch on how artists can, navigate the system to get their music heard by the right people.
Because when you think about the sheer scale, millions upon millions of songs,
Mm.
over 500 million users,
It's huge.
all generating data every single second, building that truly unique taste profile for each person is, well, it's a massive computational challenge.
Oh, definitely. It's about turning that ocean of music and that sea of listeners into a personalized stream just for you. It's a constant learning process, really. A feedback loop where every single interaction you have teaches the system a little more about what resonates with you.
Okay, let's dive in then. So at the most basic level, Spotify is learning from, like, everything you do, right? Playing a song, skipping a song, especially skipping early in a track,
Right, that early skip is important.
saving something to your library, adding it to a playlist. These are all signals.
Precisely. That continuous feedback is the fuel. The system isn't static, it's constantly adjusting. And the sources mentioned they even have this internal nickname for their recommendation systems, Bart.
Bart. Okay, that's a name. What's it stand for?
It's bandits for recommendations as treatments. It kind of hints at the nature of the system. It's experimental, like a multi-armed bandit problem in, machine learning.
Right.
It tries different treatments, which are recommendations, observes your reward, basically your engagement, if you listen or skip,
Mm-hmm.
and learns which ones work best for you, often in different contexts.
Part. I like that mental image, this system constantly trying to figure out the best next song to play for you right now.
Exactly.
So how does this system, Bart, actually figure out what you like? One foundational technique, I gather, is something called collaborative filtering.
Yeah, collaborative filtering is, well, it's essentially the users who like this also like that principle, just on a massive scale.
Okay.
Spotify looks at the listening behavior of its millions and millions of users and finds patterns. If you consistently enjoy many of the same songs or artists as a large group of other users,
Right.
the system identifies that you likely share similar taste profiles. Ah, so it's like having this gigantic network of friends with like uncanny taste overlap, and Spotify gets recommendations from them on your behalf.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. If they like a song you haven't heard, chances are you might too.
Makes sense.
And a key point from the sources is that this relies really heavily on implicit feedback your actions. Playing, skipping, adding.
Not like star ratings or anything.
Exactly, not explicit ratings, it's your behavior. And this is really the engine behind popular features, like the fans also like sections on artist pages. It finds those connections based on shared listening habits.
But it's not just about what other people do, right? Spotify also needs to understand the music itself. So content analysis comes in here.
Right. They analyze the actual content of the music, and they do it in a couple of main ways. First, through text analysis, often using natural language processing, NLP.
Okay.
This means looking at all the text associated with a track, metadata, descriptions, lyrics, and importantly, how the music is discussed across the web. Articles, blogs, forums. So it's basically reading the internet to understand the vibe or the context of a song.
Precisely. It pulls out key terms, themes, cultural vectors is a term they use that people use to describe the music. The sources give an example like, this kind of analysis might link artists like Post Malone and Drake,
Okay.
not just because they might appear on similar playlists, but because of the way they are talked about together online. This is invaluable for understanding brand new songs, before they have much listening data.
That makes sense. You can get a feel for a new song based on the words people use about it.
Right.
What about the sound itself, though, the actual audio?
That's the second part, audio analysis. And this is powerful technology, a lot of it inherited from the Echo Nest acquisition Spotify made years ago.
Ah.
They analyze the raw audio signal of a track, the waveforms, the frequencies, using machine learning to extract features.
Like tempo, key, loudness, that kind of stuff.
Yes, those foundational elements, definitely. But also higher level attributes, things like danceability, energy, how speechy a track is, how instrumental it is, and valence.
Valence.
Yeah, valence measures the musical mood, basically, like happiness or sadness in the sound.
Interesting.
So by analyzing the raw sound, they can group songs that sound similar, even if they belong to different genres or have absolutely no listening history yet.
Right.
This is crucial for tackling the cold start problem, recommending a brand new track solely based on its sound profile, matching your learned audio preferences.
Okay, so the core engine, it understands you by looking at what you do, that's collaborative filtering, what others like you do, more CF, and what the music actually is, both through text and the sound itself, content analysis.
Exactly. It's the synergistic blend of those perspectives that builds that detailed taste profile for you and really for every track in their massive catalog.
Okay, we spent a lot of time on the listener side. Let's pivot a bit. How does this look from the artist's perspective? If you're making music, how do you interact with, or I guess influence, this complex algorithmic system?
That's a great question. And it's not a completely opaque black box for artists, you know? The key is really to understand what signals the algorithm is looking for.
Right.
And then optimize for genuine listener engagement, because that's what tells the system a song is connecting with people.
So what are the most important metrics then? What's the algorithm really watching for artists?
Well, the fundamental one is pretty simple. Does someone play your song for at least 30 seconds? That counts as a stream.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yep. On the flip side, skips are a negative signal, especially if people skip very early in the track.
The dreaded early skip, yeah.
Exactly. Strong positive signals, though, are when a listener saves your song to their library or, perhaps even more powerfully, adds it to one of their own playlists.
Adding to a playlist feels like a real endorsement, doesn't it? Someone consciously chose your song to live alongside their other favorites.
It really is. It's a strong signal. So high engagement across these areas, getting played through, getting saves, getting playlist ads, and having a low skip rate, all of that tells the algorithm your music is resonating.
And when it sees that?
Well, when it sees that, it learns to show your music to more listeners who have similar taste profiles to the ones who engaged positively.
And the opposite is true. Low engagement means less algorithmic visibility.
Exactly. The algorithm interprets low engagement as a signal that, well, the song isn't clicking with the listeners it's being shown to, and that leads to deprioritization over time. It's a pretty direct measure of listener satisfaction, at least from the algorithm's perspective.
So for an artist trying to make this system work for them, what are the actionable steps? What should they actually do based on what we're seeing in the sources?
Okay, several key things come up. One of the most impactful is using the Spotify for Artists tool to pitch new music.
Right, I've heard about that.
You absolutely must pitch your track at least 7 days before it's released. The sources are clear on this.
7 days. Why?
Because doing this guarantees your song will be included in your followers' release radar playlists.
Oh, that's huge. Okay, so
Yeah.
even without getting picked for some big editorial playlist, you get a guaranteed boost to your most dedicated listeners.
Exactly. It provides crucial early momentum. And importantly, when you pitch, provide accurate, detailed metadata,
Metadata.
the correct genre, mood, instrumentation tags, stuff like that. This teaches Spotify how to categorize your music correctly and recommend it to the right audience based on their taste, not just because they follow you.
So simple things like tags really matter.
Immensely. Another practical step, directly related to avoiding those skips, is to nail the first 30 seconds of your song.
The intro.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this depends on the genre, but making that intro compelling can significantly reduce early skips. That improves the track's skip score, let's call it,
Okay.
making it more favorable to the algorithm in discovery contexts like, algorithmic playlists.
You're essentially proving the song's worth quickly.
You got it. Artists also need to actively encourage saves and playlist ads.
Ask their fans.
Yeah, communicate why it helps. These are incredibly strong signals to Spotify. The sources really highlight that playlist ads, even to small user-generated playlists, are vital.
Why vital?
Because they help the collaborative filtering system understand your song's context and who enjoys it. It feeds that users who like this also like that engine.
So prompting fans to do that isn't just for vanity. It directly impacts the algorithm.
It absolutely does. Driving strong early traffic is also key.
First week.
Yeah. Getting significant streams, saves, and low skips in that first week signals popularity, and that can trigger placement in algorithmic playlists like Discover Weekly down the line.
So get your core fans engaged right out of the gate.
Precisely. Consistent releases also help.
Just keep putting music out.
Yeah, it keeps you visible and provides more data for the algorithm to understand your sound and how your audience evolves. It signals you're an active artist.
Stay active, basically. Makes sense.
Right. And related to that, fostering follower growth on Spotify builds that baseline audience for Release Radar and just sends positive signals about your growing reach.
What about Spotify's own promotional tools, like Marquee?
Good point. Using tools like Canvas Figurals or Marquee for paid campaigns can boost engagement metrics, and that indirectly feeds positive signals back into the algorithmic system.
And collaborations, featuring on other tracks.
Oh yeah, featuring on other artists' tracks is a fantastic way to expose your music to new, relevant audiences.
Right.
And it builds those algorithmic connections fans also like again. It helps broaden the system's understanding of your sound's adjacent tastes.
Finally, the sources seem to really stress quality and authenticity.
Crucially, they explicitly warn against schemes like fake streams or using bot farms.
They can detect that stuff.
The algorithm is increasingly sophisticated at detecting and even penalizing non-genuine activity. Look, long-term success comes from music that genuinely resonates with real listeners. That leads to organic saves, ads, low skips. The goal is to create music people want to listen to repeatedly and share. That's what the algorithm ultimately rewards.
So artists aren't just releasing music into a void. They're actively kind of teaching the algorithm about their music's quality and who it appeals to through listener interaction.
Exactly. By focusing on great music and encouraging real engagement, artists provide the algorithm with the right data points to find the right listeners. It's a partnership, in a way.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and maybe get a little more technical for those curious about the engine under the hood.
Right.
We talked about simple collaborative filtering, but the sources dive into more advanced applications, right?
They do, yeah. Beyond just finding users with similar listening histories, Spotify uses techniques like matrix factorization.
Okay, matrix factorization. Sounds complex.
It is, but the basic idea is imagine a massive grid, a matrix, with every user on one side and every song on the other. Most of it's empty, obviously, because nobody's heard every song.
Right.
Matrix factorization mathematically breaks down this huge, sparse matrix into smaller, dense embedding vectors.
Okay, so you end up with these multi-dimensional numerical vectors. One set representing user taste and another set representing song characteristics.
Yeah.
Like coordinates in some kind of taste space.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to think about it. Each vector is a point in a high-dimensional taste space. The idea is that if a user's vector is close to a song's vector in this space, there's a high probability the user will like the song.
Gotcha.
This technique is powerful for finding related items and was pretty foundational for early algorithmic playlists like Discover Weekly.
But that still faces challenges, right? Like, what about brand new songs with no history? Or users with really specific niche tastes? The cold start problem.
Exactly. That's where they've significantly evolved. The sources really highlight the importance of playlist-based collaborative filtering.
Okay, how's that different?
Instead of only looking at who listened to what sequentially, Spotify leverages the wisdom of the crowd embedded in user-curated playlists. If two songs consistently appear together in many different users' playlists, regardless of who listened to them, or when that's a strong signal, they belong together in some context or case cluster.
Like treating playlists as baskets of songs that are somehow related, even if not by genre necessarily.
Precisely. They use techniques similar to those in natural language processing, like word2vec, but apply them to song co-occurrences in playlists.
Okay.
This helps create richer song embeddings where proximity in the vector space reflects co-appearance in these curated contexts. This is crucial for capturing nuances that simple listening history might miss, like songs that fit a specific mood, like late night study or an activity.
And how do they search through millions, probably billions of these vectors quickly enough to give me a recommendation now?
Yeah, speed is critical. They need incredibly efficient ways to find nearest neighbors in these massive embedding spaces. Spotify actually developed and open-sourced a library called Annoy, A-N-N-O-I, yeah, specifically for fast, approximate nearest neighbor searches. It's vital for making real-time recommendations work at scale.
Moving into even deeper tech, the sources talk a lot about neural networks and deep learning. Where do these fit into the picture?
Oh, they're everywhere now. Deep learning models can capture much more complex patterns than older methods. For audio analysis, for instance, they use convolutional neural networks, or CNNs.
CNNs, right,
Yeah.
like image recognition.
Similar tech, yes. They're trained on spectrograms, which are basically visual representations of sound, showing how frequencies change over time.
So the AI is essentially learning to see the patterns in the music's sound waves.
That's a really good analogy, yeah. The CNN can learn to identify instrumentation, textures, rhythms, complex audio features, and predict a song's position in that taste space purely from his audio fingerprint.
Wow.
This is a key piece in solving that cold start problem we mentioned. A brand new song with 0 streams can still be accurately recommended because the AI can understand its sound profile just by listening.
It's like the AI has developed an ear for music taste just by analyzing the sound.
In a way, yes. Deep learning is also crucial for understanding users more dynamically. Traditional CF can sometimes treat user taste as relatively static.
But my taste changes depending on my mood or what I'm doing.
Exactly. Our tastes shift. So Spotify uses recurrent neural networks, RNNs, like a model they developed called
CERN.
Yeah, to build dynamic, session-based user embeddings.
Dynamic. Meaning my taste vector actually changes during a single listening session.
Exactly. If you start a session with, say, high-energy workout music, the RNN processes that sequence of songs and creates a temporary user embedding for that specific session that reflects a preference for high energy. So the recommendations offered during that session will be influenced by this dynamic context, even if your overall long-term taste profile is different. It adapts based on the flow and context of what you're listening to right now.
And all these different signals, the collaborative filtering stuff, the audio analysis, the text analysis, this dynamic user state, how do they get combined to actually decide what song to play next?
Right, that's the integration part. That's where higher-level machine learning models come in. Often complex neural networks themselves, or maybe gradient-boosted trees.
Oh, great.
They take inputs from all these different systems, your overall taste embedding, your current session embedding, the song's content features, its position in the CF space, maybe context signals too.
Yeah.
And they predict how likely you are to engage positively, like play, not skip, save.
For every possible song.
For candidate songs, yeah. It's essentially a large-scale ranking problem. Select the best songs to rank highly for you right now, given everything we know.
And Bart, that bandit system we mentioned earlier, where does that fit?
That often sits kind of on top of this ranking layer. Using contextual bandits or reinforcement learning, Spotify decides which of the highly ranked candidates to actually show you.
It's not just the top-ranked one.
Not always. It needs to balance exploration, introducing something new, maybe slightly unexpected, that helps the system learn more about your taste boundaries, versus exploitation, giving you something they are highly confident you will like based on past behavior. Neural models can help predict the potential reward, your positive engagement, for each potential recommendation, factoring in this explore-exploit trade-off.
So it's optimizing not just for my immediate satisfaction, but also for long-term learning and discovery too, trying to avoid getting me stuck in a rut.
Precisely. They're balancing multiple objectives, user enjoyment now, user discovery, maybe even artist diversity, or helping new artists. It's complex.
Wow. Okay, so with this incredibly complex engine working away, what does it actually look like from the user side? The most visible output is probably those personalized playlists, right? Discover weekly, daily mixes.
Exactly. The AI-driven playlists are the practical manifestation of this whole recommendation engine, but each one is tailored. It has a specific algorithmic recipe on top of that core foundation, really designed for a particular user goal.
Like Discover Weekly, what's its specific goal?
Discover Weekly, updated every Monday, is primarily optimized for novelty and discovery. Pure and simple.
Finding stuff I haven't heard.
Exactly. It heavily leverages collaborative filtering and content analysis to find songs you haven't heard but are statistically likely to love based on your profile and similar users. Its success is really measured by whether you save or listen repeatedly to those new tracks it suggests.
Gotcha. And Release Radar. That feels different.
It is different. That's your Friday update, and it's focused squarely on new releases.
Some artists I know.
Primarily, yes. It prioritizes tracks from artists you follow or listen to frequently, and also related artists identified through those affinity networks we talked about. Its goal is simply to keep you current with music from your established taste orbit.
Okay. And the daily mixes feel different again. There are usually several of them.
They do feel different. Daily mixes, often multiple lists updated daily, are built around clustered themes within your taste.
Themes.
Yeah, Spotify identifies distinct facets of your listening, maybe your workout music, your chill R&B stuff, your indie rock phase from college.
Yeah.
And it creates mixes combining mostly familiar favorites from that specific cluster, maybe sprinkled with a few fitting new suggestions that match that vibe.
So they're optimized for.
For longer, continuous listening within a specific mood or genre context. Less about pure discovery, more about comfort, familiarity, and low skips within that specific taste facet.
So daily mixes are less about, wow, new song, and more about, ah, yeah, this is my workout vibe, or perfect for relaxing.
Correct. And of course, other playlists like On Repeat or Repeat Rewind are more straightforward reflections of your recent history, though still using some personalization in presentation. And even editorial playlists or the layout of the home screen use personalization to decide which curated lists or tracks are most relevant to you.
So the key takeaway is that each playlist has a specific purpose, and the algorithms powering it are tuned specifically for that purpose, whether it's novelty, keeping up with new releases, matching a specific mood, or leaning into familiarity.
Exactly. They're distinct products, but they're all built on those shared underlying technologies of understanding you and understanding the music.
Now, we mentioned earlier that taste isn't static, that it depends on context. How does the algorithm actually factor in when and where you're listening?
Yeah, this is the context-aware recommendation layer, and it's increasingly important. Spotify learns that your listening habits often change throughout the day or the week.
Like, I definitely need energetic music for a morning run, which is totally different from what I want in the evening, winding down.
Precisely. The algorithm identifies and learns these distinct taste profiles linked to different times or days. When you open the app at, say, 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, it accesses the part of your taste profile associated with Tuesday morning listening to help inform the recommendations it gives you right then.
And does the device matter? Listening on headphones versus a speaker? Or my activity?
The device can definitely hint at the context about private listening on headphones versus maybe more social listening on a speaker. Spotify has also certainly explored integrating with activity data. We see patents, for example, now. Patents don't always mean something is implemented.
Sure.
But they show the thinking. Things like using sensor data for cadence-based playlists for running. The ambition is clearly to infer context from more than just your past listening history on the platform.
Location and demographics, too. Do they play a role?
Location can matter for incorporating relevant local music trends if they fit your general taste profile. Language appropriateness is obviously considered, too. Demographics might be used as features to help group users initially, but listening behavior itself is usually the primary driver of personalization.
And that dynamic taste vector you mentioned from the Concern model plays into this context stuff.
Absolutely. The sequential context of your current session is a huge clue. If you suddenly start listening to instrumental focus music,
Right.
the algorithm can infer a work or study context, and the recommendations will adapt even if your usual preferred genre is, say, punk rock. It tries to understand the intent behind your current listening session.
So it's really trying to figure out why you're listening right now, not just what you usually listen to.
Yes. And it also infers context from other things like the title of a playlist you start playing, chill vibes, workout pump up,
Makes sense.
or even potentially voice commands, play something upbeat and instrumental.
Technically, how do they blend this context into the recommendations?
They use techniques like contextual bandits, which we touched on, and they build contextual embeddings. Basically, your user embedding isn't treated as static. It's dynamically adjusted or weighted based on the detected context, time of day, the sequence of songs you just heard, inferred activity. The models then predict your likelihood of engagement given this specific situation.
Wow.
The sources even mention ideas like that controversial patent about exploring using voice analysis for mood or environment inference. Again, it's crucial to say it's not confirmed to be an active use.
Right.
But it illustrates the direction, trying to predict what music you need or want in this specific moment and environment.
It's fascinating how it moves beyond just who you are generally to who you seem to be right now in this particular context.
That's really the cutting edge, isn't it? Making recommendations feel not just relevant, but almost empathetic and perfectly timed for your specific situation.
We've really journeyed deep into the Spotify engine room today. It's clear this isn't just one algorithm, but a really complex, interconnected system.
Absolutely. It's a sophisticated ensemble, really. Collaborative filtering, content analysis using both text and audio, deep learning models for understanding both the content and user behavior, intricate user modeling, and this increasingly important dynamic contextual awareness all working together.
And the ultimate goal, it seems, is always to connect you with the music you already love and, crucially, help you discover new music you'll also love by understanding your unique taste and context better than ever before.
It's a perpetually learning, constantly adapting system, always trying to get better at predicting that next perfect song for you.
Which I guess leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. Considering how much data Spotify collects, not just what you play, but your skips, your saves, the specific sequence of songs in a session, the time of day you listen, maybe even other context clues. How much of your personal music journey on Spotify is genuinely your independent exploration, and how much is being subtly, perhaps even significantly, shaped and guided by the invisible hand of this incredibly powerful recommendation engine?